Oh shit. What's up, everybody? How's it going? Looks like we got a few people here already. I just want to start by saying hello, hello, hello to everybody who's joining us tonight. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me know if you can't. And if you can, good. So first we got DK Blackschlager. First comment for the win, he says, followed up by Dan Best saying, hey, and I guess he creeped DK out a little bit. He says, I don't know you, let go of my purse. Patchwork is here. I'm not sure if he liked that as Jose or what, but what's up, everybody? He says. CJ's here. He says howdy. Atropa says greetings. Star Ruby Corsi says hey, 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 everyone. And DK already with the 10 spot. I don't know what the heck you're doing. I appreciate that a lot, DK. Thank you so much. He says, can we go over contextual anecdotal scenarios, examples of magic, manifest divine will versus magic wishes? Yes. Also, have you noticed the military birds flying around? Yes. Yeah, a little bit. Maybe not as much, though. Where I am, we don't see as much of that. So we'll definitely get on that, especially, I assume you're referring a little bit to my Facebook post that has been getting so many interesting comments the last couple days. Most people, you know, received that post very well, but a few people seemed a little confused, and some people seemed a little rattled, actually. So we'll definitely talk about that. Right now, I'm sipping the tea. It's almost like we're going to be talking some gossip. And of course, it's like a giant teacup. It's decaf, though. Like, what's the point? All right. Kelly says, good evening. And she gives us the devil horns and heart. Skeleton Power says, hello, everyone, and hail. The Blue Wrench, Shrieking Violet, says, good evening, all. And number 7, Light, says, hello, hello, hello. So, okay, so obviously most of the people watching right now were not at QXT's the other night. That event went really, really well. I've got a video that I am processing that is going to be uploaded hopefully within the next day or so. I just edited it, but the problem is I'm thinking I might need to sort of zoom in a little bit and crop out some people, because I was told that at this event, people don't like to be necessarily put in, you know, publicized without their permission. And I'm not sure who it was that was sort of talking on the side that sort of got in the frame. So I may cut that out and re-release it, but it went very well. So for anyone from the Iron Garden who may watch this later or may tune in or may be watching now, I want to thank all of you guys for giving me a really awesome welcome. I was nervous as all fuck because I'm used to speaking to my webcam. It's been a while since I've spoken to a live audience, and I think it's a good experience for me because I got to like totally vamp out and just enjoyed the energy of the room and of the people listening to me, and it was a lot of fun. But you know, we're going to be doing this again for sure. I've already told Madam X and some other people that sort of run that event that I have at least the preliminary intention, my wife and I, of possibly joining Iron Garden, making it official. So we're going to have to go there a few times and see how it fits. This first experience was very good. And it's kind of just right. It's not too big where it's like hundreds of people. But it was a pretty decent number of people were there, and it was a lot of fun. And it was, you know, just intimate enough that you could sort of get to know people, and it was also big enough that there was a lot of new people. So I enjoyed it, and we're going to see how it goes from here. But I'll be there. Most likely, the wife and I will be going, I'm going to say 90% sure. October 29th is the next time we're intending on being there. So if you're able to make it to QXT's in Newark in time for that, we will be there. And hopefully you will get to see us and hang out with us, you know, so that'll be fun. But yeah, all are welcome. If you can get there, all are welcome. Patrick says, bing bong, and he laughs. I wish I was there. I wish I were there, but work and life in general. Dude, I totally understand. Someday I am going to manifest the shit out of millions of dollars, and I'm just going to get like some kind of a crazy, you know, almost like, I don't know, I'm going to get my own estate or something, and we're just going to like mail people to me. So that'll be pretty cool. Okay, Nayla Rompre Pepin asks, hey, hi, would you happen to have good suggestions of books about Osmodius? Want to learn more and begin with him since I'm soul linked to him. All right, so the cool thing about Osmodius, Ashmadeva, all those names are appropriate for him. I did a video on him. I do not recommend when you are working with, I'm going to get to, by the way, the super chat question in a minute. That's a longer conversation, so I hope you understand, DK. Working with any spirit, there is such a thing as over research to the point where you do not have room for your own experiences. You anticipate too much. You pollute your own sort of inner eye with what other people have seen, and you don't leave enough room for them to work with you. Now, it's not cut and dry where like you should only read this and no more. What I'm suggesting is if you have not worked with a spirit yet, start smaller, not bigger. I sort of run against the grain of some other people who do what I do. Some of them say research, research, research. Yes, later. Start with an introductory research. Contact the spirit in your own way, whether you think of it as just a piece of your own psychology or a mask of the divine or a literal theistic entity, whichever one of those three perspectives you belong to. Engage with that entity and see where it takes you. Let it be whatever it is. And then once you have made contact, ask that spiritual entity, whatever that is again, to guide you in learning what it is. And then be open for it to be whatever it is. Now, from the perspective of literature and lore, there is more written about Osmodius than most other quote-unquote demons in existence. There's a lot written about Osmodius, or Osmode, or Ashmadeva. You can begin with the Book of Tobit, which is an ancient, apocryphal work about King Solomon building the temple, working with Ashmadeva as one of the principal demons that helps him build the temple, and it's a pretty good clue as to what this entity, is like. You work your way through the lore, and you will come across all kinds of mythology and things. The nuns of the monastery or the nunnery of Loudun, or however they pronounce it, is a story about like this Catholic, nunnage or whatever it was. I don't know what you call it, where all these nuns were, and all these like bizarre sexual things, and they all claim that they were possessed by the demon Osmodius, and the guy who was actually really behind it eventually gets caught for something else, and it's like this cool story. Like they could make that into like a really cool horror movie, just like change it up a little bit. It'd be like a really cool story. So there's a lot written about Osmodius out there. That is historic, or at least culturally, right? Like mythologized. It's not just urban legends or something. It's stuff that's found in historical literature. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people place Osmode or Osmodius as one of the key spirits in their work. And Jose says, Lucifer, yeah. To another degree, but Lucifer's a little more difficult because Lucifer, it's one of those things where who is Lucifer really? It was a mistranslation of the Bible to even call it that. So that's another conversation. We'll put it that way. Patchwork says, I dove headfirst in the entities in Necronomicon and with Amon back when I was new to high magic. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Amon of Amon-Ra fame, okay? But it was anglicized, westernized, corrupted by medieval Christians to be a demon called Amon. But you're really talking about, look, most of the demons that we encounter, most of the spirits we encounter in left-hand demonolatry are corruptions that Christians did of pagan and heathen and other faiths, okay? That doesn't mean you can't work with them. I want to make that clear. They have become valid expressions, masks of the divine themselves. They are their own entities, if you will. But their origins are as corruptions of older truths. Okay. So for the purists out there who only want to work with the pure thing, you may want to just skip right over all the demon stuff and go to the original spirits that they were, if you're feeling any kind of way about Christianity. Like, to be brutally honest, that's a very important step. This is why so many people might go to paganism, or even people who work with demons might still call themselves a pagan of some sort, right? So, greetings, DN Blackwood. What's up? People telling me it's 10:10. I guess that's a magical time. Yeah, this is just some Lipton, dude. This isn't anything. I think CJS asked if it was like anything special. No, this is just some cheap ass Lipton. I may be powerful, but the way I'm powerful is I'm cheap. All right, let's see. So, in a little bit, DK, I'm definitely going to cover that question because I just want to make sure we got a lot of people watching. That's an important question. One thing I got to be careful of is that if I really get into this topic, this is like a 2-hour rant potentially. This would be a big rant, and I've ranted these things before. Nothing that I said in that Facebook post was anything actually new. It was just a rephrasing and a rehashing of things I've said many times before. But it seemed to step on some toes without meaning to. I mean, there was no intention to. I knew it might ruffle some feathers, but there was no intention of like pissing people off. That wasn't my intention. I will say everybody who commented on my particular post was respectful. So I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody. But I will say that looking at other people's, when they shared my post, there was quite a few people who had rather strongly negative things to say, both about me and about the post. Something I said really triggered a bunch of people. And I think it's because, number one, it's kind of easy to misinterpret what I said. I also think that when it's not misinterpreted, it's still misinterpreted, but I think that it threatens people's, attachments a lot. Because the entire point of the post is to learn to transcend your attachments. Your attachments are what keep you from actually manifesting. In most cases, in fact, in all cases, when you're trying to manifest something, your idea that this is a real reality that is something you control and that you exist within it, this pigeonholes you into a paradigm of who you think you are and what the world you think it is. And when that happens, this is a form of dogma, by the way. When you're dogmatic in this kind of way, so egoism is a kind of dogmatism. People don't realize that. If we're going with the real core meaning of the words, egoism is really a dogma about the self. Okay. So when you have a dogma about the self, that means you automatically have a dogma about the world and your place in it, because you can't separate the two. There is no separation between you and the world. There is distinction, just like the different colors of a rainbow are distinct from each other, but they're not separate. They're all part of the same light, right? So there's no separation from you and the rest of the universe. This means that whatever you think you are in relationship to the rest of it. They're mirrors of each other. Okay? So if you believe that you are XYZ, then you cannot be ABC. This limits very strongly what you can manifest, whether it be through magic or mundane means, to be brutally honest. It doesn't matter whether you're using magic or not. Now, a lot of people... Behemoth X, what's up, brother? He says, go slow for me, DH, and don't use any big words. Oh, I'm going to use the biggest words. I hear you like them 13 letters long, baby. Oh, yeah. I don't know, Behemoth, were you here last week? I think you were. I vaguely remember seeing your name. I wasn't keeping track of the chat as well as usual. I'm pretty sure you were here. He was there. Yeah, he was here. I remember him being here. I think he saw Fleshy. We're going to get Fleshy back on again soon. Don't worry about that. He definitely said that he wants to start coming back on. Not all the time. He's going to come back on well, we'll see. Just once a month or so, once every few months. But he would like to make the occasional cameo because, he did enjoy doing this from time to time. That's for sure. especially since, at least right now, the real world politics questions and things have kind of softened out a little bit. I think a lot of people are feeling a little bit less crazy about it. So it's not so much a topic. So he says, I fucking need a dictionary by my side. You know, I don't know. I can't spell for shit, but I have a gigantic fucking vocabulary. And I only use the word fuck like a million times a sentence, so. Yeah, so my post, a lot of people read that post, and I don't know if it's like a lack of reading comprehension or a case of I explained it in a way that maybe I did use words that were too, you know, difficult for some people. I recognize that. Or maybe they just resisted the point. The point is, and the statement is, magic doesn't cause anything to happen. Magic manifests divine will. People read that and they key in on that magic doesn't cause anything to happen, and their ego immediately kicks in. Their egoic response is, how dare you? How dare you try to dispel my delusion of myself having power? They've taught themselves, totally understandably, I'm not judging it, because this is the great difficulty. This is the point of all of these practices. This is the point of theurgy and magic and all of these things, is to recognize the illusion of this and come to terms with the reality of the divine itself. To one side of the aisle, the point is to submit to the divine and in that way merge with it. On the other side of the aisle, it is to become the divine, like to say, I am God, and act that way and take on that power and reach apotheosis or apophasis or whatever your vision of it is. You know, there's a middle way, there's a left way, a right way, and all that. But magic, you know, I had one person, I was reading their comment and they posted like a link to Thelema. And I'm reading this thing because I'm vaguely familiar with Crowley's work on what he says about magic. And Crowley's first point has a lot to do with will. Yes, he says that magic is the cause of blah, blah, blah. It causes, I'd have to look up the quote exactly, but it causes, causes change in accordance with will or something like that, in conformity with will. And this is an interesting thing because even Crowley made damn sure to emphasize will over anything else. It's the will, stupid. It's not cause and effect. It's will. It's all will. Okay. Change. Now, the point that I was trying to arrive at wasn't that you don't experience changes. And some of this will sound semantical and linguistic in nature. But the reality is that words do have important differences in meaning. You know, I think that it's a very common trait for people who do magic to any kind of high level of skill are literary and linguistic, usually skilled with language. They understand the nuances of different words that may mean the same thing. You know, we say something's wet versus moist or you know, all these kinds of things. There's different meanings. Yes, they sound the same, they mean the same, but there's a different sort of intonation, if you will. But the point I'm getting at is that the way that I treat magic is it is a system of manifestation, not a system of cause and effect. Magic allows the self to transcend the egoic delusion of this being a real world, one way or another. Okay, it's a little bit of a shortcut for some people, true. To transcend this delusional reality, and then in that way allow themselves to sort of witness reality in a different way. What do I mean? Well, this is where it gets kind of, I have to like just take a long sip of my tea, actually. That's right, Jose. Everyone does magic without even knowing whether they're willing to acknowledge it or not. Every single moment of your life is magic manifest. You just don't realize it because it's kind of mundane to you. It's the everyday. You don't think of it as magic. You know, in some ways I can't stand the word magic. I have to be brutally honest with you. Magic is sort of taken on like it's a life of its own. People think of magic like it's an energy or it's a science. I see as magic is the ultimate science. It's a technology, and it's almost another one of those meaningless words like meditation. We all use them. Like I use magic all the time. I use meditation all the time, but it's almost a meaningless word. There is no official definition of the word. And this is part of the problem with this practice, is that when one person says magic, they might mean something different than what other people mean. All right, let me try to break this down for you guys. This theory of everything. Now, it's more than a theory to me. For me, this is not a theory. Everything I'm about to tell you, and by the way, thank you again, DK. I just saw that. Ego tells me to donate more than anyone else. There is no divine. There is only Zool. Are you a god? Yeah. Make sure you say yes whenever somebody asks you that question. You know, I'm gonna put my hair back up. I just drank some hot tea and I feel sweaty, even though it's like October. Like, why am I sweaty if it's October? I have to be careful because I don't want to blow my load about all my magical ideas in a video and then not write about it. But most of what I'm about to say is already written, so that's a cool thing, I guess. In fact, I think I'm gonna put the air conditioner on too. I am hot. Hot, hot, hot. Thank you, T. Thank you, T. I should sound like, what's his name? I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Guy who does Mr. Sulu. I can't remember. Yeah, George Takei. Thank you, honey. You know, I actually, before I do that, I have to warn you guys. When Fleshy was here, I spent the whole week indulging in carbs, so my brain took a giant shit. People don't know, when you're on a ketogenic diet, your ability to focus and concentrate and think is way better than when you're on carbs. Like, I can't remember words now. It's actually pretty funny. Oh my goodness, thank you, Patchy. I honestly believe the imagination is just intense channeling, and I got the AC running right now. Yeah, I think that hurricane made it all warm again. All right. So let's sort of start from the beginning, shall we? In the beginning. In fact, I'm gonna turn the chat off so I don't see all y'all, so I don't get distracted. Yeah, let me know if there's a super. That'd be great. I can actually see it on this screen, but I got to remember not to look at it. Let us begin with this realization that is an ancient realization. It may not be yours. You may not have had this realization yet, but I assure you that if one seeks, one shall find. This realization is inevitable. And this realization is the non-dual realization. And I know there's a joke going around where whenever Thorne says non-duality, you got to take a shot. So I hope everybody's taking a shot. The reason I harp on about the concept of non-duality, the reason I harp on about this is because this is really the purpose and the point. When you have transcended this material mortal delusion of this world through whatever practice, it may be transcendental meditation, it may be psychedelics, it may be a near-death experience, whatever it is for you, when you transcend this mirage, you recognize the complete and utter, perfectly, not just interconnected, because that implies separation that's connected, you realize the complete and utter union of all possible polarities. You recognize that there is but one infinite, boundless, timeless, eternal, divine being. And that being is the witness of all that is. That being is the witness in which all things transpire. So when you think of yourself, the self that you're thinking of is something that the true self is witnessing. Think about that for a moment. I want you to have a moment, just for a moment, be present within yourself and realize that that self that you're experiencing is actually not the self. It's actually something that the self is experiencing. Sort of like your name is not who you are. Sort of like your clothes are not who you are. Your thoughts are something you are experiencing. Who's experiencing that thought? Your thoughts aren't what's doing the experiencing. The true self is doing the experiencing. When you use whatever method you use to either, well, usually you got to begin, most people have to like rationalize away their delusions first, because most delusions are rational in nature. You argue yourself into believing you exist, if you will. And it's not to say that there is not existence. It's just that idea that there is a singular you that is D.H. Thorne or Behemoth X or Patchwork or whoever you think you are. That entity is unique and separate unto itself as an individual being that is not somehow perfectly in union with reality, separate from that reality. That requires a great deal of intellectual effort to even to decide that. What you don't realize, though, is you've spent your whole life training yourself to believe this. When you were born, you existed with a non-dual awareness. I guarantee it. When you were born, you had no differentiation or distinction between the self and the experience, between the subjective and the objective. There was no distinction. There was just this just cacophony of experience. And you didn't differentiate any of it. There was no, that's mom and that's dad. You didn't know what a mom and dad was till you're like 3 or 4 years old, really. Most of the time, everything that you see around you only exists as a separate entity because you have intellectualized them. You've reified them into a thing. But that thing, if you were to see it in its actuality, is perfectly unified with everything else. In fact, there are no things. There is just existence in which we use our mind to cut things out, right? When you're born, you don't do that. Your brain hasn't developed. Your mind is open. The intellect is still beginning. It has not yet become disturbed. You experience reality a lot more clearly. That doesn't mean that you're at peace. Doesn't mean that you're enlightened when you're a baby. All I mean is that you don't have the intellectual side getting in the way. There is no thought process that says this is real, this is not real, that's left, that's right, that's mom, that's dad, that's hot, that's cold. All of those things are not yet intellectualized. There is just pure, honest, innocent experiencing. Over time, you intellectualize all of this stuff and you rationalize it into things. What begins as just a sensation with no name or word or differentiation becomes the concept of warm. And that warm becomes associated with the higher pitch voice over there, and that higher pitch voice calls itself mom, but you don't know what that means yet. It's just a sound, right? So, we begin this mortal incarnation very close to the source truth, very close to the Gnostic truth, the Samadhi, the Zen truth, all of those things. We begin very close to that. And so when we grow and mature as human beings, we actually need to begin by most of us, not everybody, we need to begin by intellectually de-rationalizing this illusion that we think is real. Because if I tell the average person on the street, you're God, they go, no, I'm not. I know I'm not, because I can't do this, that, and 6 other. They got a whole bunch of rational reasons, and they all make sense. Of course they do. They are rational thoughts. They're not irrational thoughts. But they rationalize themselves into these little separate boxes. Those boxes, sure, they work. You can't make a computer without intellectual boxes, right? There's no question that those boxes are useful. It's just they're illusory. There is no literal box around things like we put with our minds. So when we begin this journey, we have to deconstruct those intellectualized reifications, those ideas that make us feel like we're a separate individual apart from the rest of the world. Now, I want to sort of go on a tangent here. A lot of people say, well, Thorne, aren't you Luciferian? Isn't that all about individualism? Yes. However, it's not individualism as separation. It's individualism as recognition of the beauty, the individuality of the entire system. That is to say, I am a wave upon a great ocean, and I am a wave that looks this way, but I'm not that wave. I'm really the ocean. But this wave is awesome. I like this wave. I'm going to treat it as an individual, and I'm going to celebrate that individual wave, even though I know that that wave is ultimately part of the same ocean. It's not separate from it. It's not distinct from it, really. It's distinct because we choose to distinguish it. So we must intellectually, most of us, struggle with this idea first. Because if you don't struggle with the idea first and sort of rationalize it, at least to the point where you're open to the possibility that your idea of separation is an illusion, you can't take the next step successfully. Most people get stuck on the rationalized side. They don't do the work because they don't believe it's going to do anything. We argue ourselves into believing we're separate, so we don't try the thing that will reveal the separation to be an illusion. So we have to begin with rational exercises, conversations with ourselves, contemplation, listening to lunatics like me, listening to people like Rupert Spira and Alan Watts and Eckhart Tolle, and reading, the various Buddhist works and Shankara and all this stuff. We have to go through all of this, Neoplatonism, all of that. We got to go through all of this because we've got to argue ourselves out first of our dogmatic belief that we are this and nothing more. You've got to argue that away. That is a very necessary step for most people. Not everybody, but most people. The next step is you need to employ some sort of method of disobjectification. Now, disobjectification is what some people call transcendental meditation. You might be talking about psychedelics. You might be talking about, there's a lot of different ways to do this. You don't need psychedelics to do it. In fact, I would argue that if you do that first, you may get you may get thrown in the deep end without a paddle, and it may be difficult for you to understand. So it may be more traumatic than it is helpful. I personally have not done psychedelics. I'm eager to play, but I have not done them. What I've done instead is transcendental work and had experiences, so to speak. That's how language works, although that's an improper way to put it. There have been experiences that I've encountered, realizations that I've encountered without any psychedelics, which mirror what psychedelics people tell you. Okay, it's like we're both seeing the same thing, but I didn't need the drugs to do it. Now, if I had done the chemicals, would I see it more vividly? Probably, because those chemicals have their own power to help you disobjectify, because they really do disconnect a lot of those things that make you objectified. Okay, they really rewire your brain for a minute. They definitely unplug the objectification device, the objectification circuit in your brain. And if you're doing the right ones to the right degree, you totally disobjectify. So once you have experienced, and that's an inappropriate way to say it, because there's no you when it happens. But once you have experienced this ego death, this disobjectification experience, you are left in an abyss, in oblivion, in a void where all there is consciousness. Consciousness is all there is. Now, consciousness is awareness aware of itself. If you probe this concept deep enough, you realize that really your awareness, that's what you are. You are awareness itself. And that awareness is aware of something. It's aware that it's aware. That self-awareness is consciousness. Awareness, aware of itself, becomes consciousness. Consciousness, conscious of the fact that it's conscious, becomes self-consciousness, self-awareness, self-realization, boom, 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 and materiality begins to emerge through that process. This is the same thing we see in Neoplatonism with the monad and the first divisions. You have the nous and the logos and all these different things, and there's like this explosion from one comes many, out of one many, shall we say. And we see this same story repeated in every religion and tradition around the world. There's just different ways of saying it. I've got my own way of talking about it. That's all. What's that, Patrick? Super chat? Let me see. Hey, Apache, stop sending me money. I would like to add most of the thoughts people have really don't even belong to them. It's true. Thoughts are things we find. Thoughts are things that our brain are doing. Thoughts are not thought. You don't think thoughts. Thoughts are things you find. Okay? You know how I know that? Because when you've learned to experience a subdued mind, shall we say, where there's not a lot of active internal thinking, you realize that it's not that there's no thoughts going on. It's just that you're not allowing them to manifest as subvocal things. You're not being anxious about them. You're not focusing on them. You're not paying attention to them. They fade into the background and just become part of the noise until eventually you don't hear them anymore. And then you got to go looking for them when you want to. You have to look for them. You have to intentionally make them happen. But you don't cause them, you find them. Okay? Now, once you come back from your non-dual experience, from your ego death, from whatever you want to call it, once you come back into this real world, which you then know is not the real world, once you come back to what everybody thinks is the real world, now you've got another problem. Now you've got to intellectualize and rationalize what you just experienced. Because you're here again, and now you're looking at the world and you're going, all of this is a fucking facade that's taking place in my mind, and my mind is not in my brain. In fact, my brain is an idea in my mind, and everything I'm saying is just, it's all an act that I'm doing, and why am I even doing it? And oh my goodness, you've got a lot to do now. So what does this have to do with magic? I'm getting to that. After having these transcendental awakenings, samadhi, gnosis, Zen, whatever your version of this is, you become more aware of the fact that this is not real. This is Maya. This is the simulacrum. This is a model that is built out of language. Now, I don't mean language like words, although words are a very advanced type of language. I mean the true essence of language, symbolism. Listen to some, I can see his face in my head, Psychonaut guy. Oh my goodness. Terence McKenna. Listen to some Terence McKenna. He points this out very clearly. This entire experience that you're calling your everyday real world is a syntactical linguistic puzzle that you've put together. This is a model. This isn't real life. When you see the world out there is really an experience inside consciousness. It's not even in here, because in here is an idea in consciousness. There is no inside, no outside. All of this is an illusion called Maya or the simulacra. Those are my two favorite words for it. When you recognize that, when you realize that there is consciousness and everything that you see within it is only representative of the truth, representative of the divine, you then have to spend a lot of time trying to understand how all this is put together. It's really simple because you know how it is, but it's difficult to rationalize it in a way that others would understand. When I tell people that this world isn't real, the first response to that is, well, of course it's real. If I were to go hit you with a car, you'd die. Or if I say that magic doesn't cause things to happen, it manifests true will, people say, yeah, but I did a spell and so died, or I got what I wanted. They'll say, well, I have this evidence that points that it's real. What I'm trying to get at is that people are confusing the experience for the noumenal reality behind it. I've used this analogy before when talking about like a candle flame. When you light a candle on fire and you're looking at the flame, you're not actually seeing flame, you're actually seeing what flame inspires in the mind. The true essence of fire is not the light, it's not the heat. It's none of those things that are symbolically representative of fire. Fire is before all of those symbols. It inspires those symbols, inspires you to recognize and see and experience those symbols. But fire is not the symbols. Fire is not the detections of fire. Fire is something you have never and will never witness in the way that you are used to witnessing things. However, when you transcend these superficial, linguistic, symbolic things, completely transcend them, you can still have a perfect awareness of fire. So what do I mean by magic doesn't cause anything to happen? What I mean is precisely this. Your shadow on the wall can't make someone else's shadow do anything, can it? Can I do a shadow puppet thing in front of a light and cause things to happen to another shadow? No, of course not. If I want the other shadow to change, I've got to change the thing projecting those shadows. In a similar analogy, if I'm going bibbity bobbity boo with a bunch of candles, I'm playing shadow puppets. If those other shadow puppets don't comply, I can't make them comply just by doing what I'm doing with my hands. I've got to change the projection. You don't change reality. What you do is you are changing what's manifested. It's sort of like reading a choose your own adventure book. The book is already written. You don't change the book by reading it. You change the story that you encounter by changing the order of events. But you don't change the book. You don't change reality. The book is, so the analogy here is that imagine, just as an analogy, the divine is like a multiverse that's a choose your own adventure book where every possible story exists. You experience a timeline of events because that's the story that you're reading moment to moment. If you want to change that story, you don't change the book, you change the page that you're reading. When it says go to page 12, if you want to do A, or go to page 42 if you want to do B, you go to whichever. People think, because they exist in a very egoistic frame, that what they do changes the book. This is like someone who's been reading a book for so long that they forgot they're reading a book, and they don't even realize that there's a book. How many of you guys, when you read a book, don't see the words after a while? How many of you guys, when you're reading a book, after a while, doesn't it just appear in your mind's eye as whatever? I got no super chat? Okay, hold on.
It's been sitting there for a minute.
Oh my goodness.
Say something.
Oh, thank you, Azarath. That's awesome. And thank you. That's a really, really big donation. I appreciate that. He says, you've been a huge impact on me and my spiritual path. I find myself quoting your words quite often when discussing these kinds of topics. Truly a light bringer in this world. Thank you, DH. Oh, man. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. That's ow, man. Now I feel like all pressure and shit. Like I got to do a better job. I just got paid. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I mean, I don't want to be... Look, arrogance-wise, I love that. Yes, I'm the one who's doing this, but to be truly, brutally honest with you, my goal eventually for everybody is that you find a way to put this in your own words. Don't just quote me. You know, it's kind of like Alan Watts. One of the things I liked about Alan Watts is he's insanely quotable, and then after a while, you don't have to anymore. Like you'll just sort of get what he's saying, and you can just explain it yourself. And I sincerely, I'm proud and I'm honored that you feel that way. And I hope that at some point you'll go on your own and find your own words. They may be just like my words, but I hope you find your, and I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. I'm just saying, when I read that, I'm like, oof, that's a lot. That's a lot on me. That's a lot of pressure on little old me. As highly as I think of myself, that's a lot on me. That's a lot on me. All right. So when people are trapped in a highly, again, there's nothing wrong with ego. I want to triple down on this thing. There's nothing wrong with ego. That's why you're here, is to experience egoism, all right? You're here to experience this sadomasochistic orgy of life. That's what you're here to do. There is no question. When you have actual Gnostics, now I use Gnosticism as a pattern, but I don't believe in Gnosticism. When you have actual Gnostics, they will say this world is evil, it's fallen, it's bad, you need to reject it, you need to go aesthetic, you need to go and transcend this world and go into heaven and blah, 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 blah. Like this is some kind of prison or punishment. This is not a prison or punishment. You are here because this is where the fun is. And this is also, so in Asian philosophy, you know, Buddhism, stuff like that, this is the middle world. And interestingly enough, in Norse mythology, it's the middle, it's Midgard, right? It's the middle earth there too, right? Why are we always in the fucking middle? That should tell you something. Where else would the divine be? The divine would always be in the middle of everything, wouldn't it? Wouldn't God always be in the center of the universe, wherever that is? Infinity means everywhere is the middle, by the way, just so you know. Everywhere is the middle of infinity. So this mortal existence is not a punishment. This is the great sadomasochistic orgy that the divine is just loving it, just loving every minute of it. Yes, even the shit you hate, even the parts you hate are wonderful to the divine. I know that sounds twisted, but if you have ever, you know, transcended that egoic state, you realize the truth in what I'm saying. At least the shadow of the truth, even if you can't see the whole thing. You realize that you don't hate this at all. You really don't. Even if you think like, oh man, I lost my leg and I hate this shit, this hurts. You hate that stuff, but you don't hate this, the whole thing. You're here for the whole thing. You need that pain for the pleasure to mean anything. You need that mortality for the immortality to mean something. You need to experience polarity to experience either side of it. You can't have a negative without a positive, a hot without a cold, and so on. So you're experiencing this shit show, this orgy, this sadomasochistic experience. And part of that, an important part of that is to have a relativistic identity in the middle of the whole thing that gives you relationship to the rest of it. How can you have hot or cold unless you're somewhere in the middle that can point out both? You know, when people say you can't have hot without cold, they're missing an important ingredient, and that is the thing in the middle that recognizes both. The ego gives you this ability. The egoistic concept of self gives you that ability to differentiate between the extremes. You'll notice, isn't the ego always in the middle? Is the ego not always in the middle of everything, everywhere? All the time? Be honest with yourself. Really, really probe your idea of ego, of yourself. When I say ego, I don't mean like pride or something. Like people say, oh, Thorne, you're egoistic. Yeah, whatever. Don't care. I'm talking about ego from the psycho-spiritual sense. The sense of a self that's separate from other things. Without this egoic concept that you exist as a separate entity, an individual separate from other individuals, rather than an individual that is part of a greater whole. Without that egoic feeling, even if it's only superficial in degree, without at least a pinch of that, you don't experience this mortal world at all. You transcend, you go to sleep, basically, you die, whatever it is, you become unconscious. There is no self to experience anything. Again, encounter ego death. What happens? What does ego death even mean? Someone who exists without a lot of thought processes, who is literally just existing, is experiencing a kind of ego death. When you're able to just be present in the moment without a sense of self or thought, that is a form of ego death. You are just there as consciousness present in this moment. There is no idea of self, it's just existing. And you go further than that when you have less of an identity to play with. If you are in a sensory deprivation tank, and your whole body goes away because you're floating there and there's no sensation and there's no light and there's nothing that tells you that you're a body in a tube, it's just darkness, you just become consciousness in darkness, especially if you do transcendental meditation while you're doing it, or if you empty the mind while you're doing it. If you're just there as a presence, ego's gone. Ego's gone, and the first time that happens, that can be a little scary for some people. It's this feeling like I'm dead. I don't exist. Ah! A lot of people get scared from it. So, when I say that magic doesn't cause change to happen, what I'm indicating is that the divine is known to have several irrational sort of qualities. And I don't even want to use the word qualities, that's not quite right. But there are several irrational statements that we can make about it. The divine is eternal. The divine is boundless. The divine is infinite. The divine is no thing. If the divine is all of those things, how is it that we experience these finite things? Well, just because something is boundless doesn't mean you can't draw boundaries within the boundlessness. You can have an infinite space of nothingness and draw boxes all around it. The divine manifests within its own conscious experience of itself a singular universe of experience that you call your life, that you call this universe. You're always at the center of it. But if the divine is infinite and boundless, that means that technically there's no limit to what that universe can contain or be like. The only reason it seems so limited is because you have your egoistic perspective within it. You've limited yourself to this person, this place, this thing, this time, this space, this dimension. Egoistically, you limited yourself. Now remember, like I said, you may not have intentional egoism, but it is there, okay? Ah, look at that. Thank you, guys. DK says, if you have time, what are some magic exercises helped you and how have they helped you? I'll have to come back to that one. Jay Sauber with the $4.99. Thank you, brother. Woo! Thank you, Jay. It's a good night tonight. I feel like you guys are spoiling me tonight. It's been a little while since we had these big night. Let me try coming at this, especially for those of you who are struggling a little bit. Let me come back at this from a more mundane perspective, okay? How many of you guys have heard of the concept of a multiverse? How many of you guys know what a multiverse is? Imagine that you are the entire multiverse experiencing itself from a very finite perspective of an individual incarnate being within that multiverse. So in that multiverse, there's an infinite number of copies of this pattern that looks like D.H. Thorne. And this multiverse exists not just as it is now, but as it is in throughout all time as we conceive of it. That means this specific observable universe begins with its Big Bang moment, and it doesn't really begin there, but that's when we begin to understand it, is at that Big Bang moment, and eventually will fade away in whatever way that it's going to fade away. Instead of thinking of that time in the past as in the past and gone, realize that the past is still there, as it was, fully formed. It just looks different now. It's still there, it just looks different now. It's the same ultimate thing, it just looks different now. It's evolved in a dimension we call time. But time doesn't move, things don't move through time. Consciousness is what's sliding through the time dimension, if you will. Like when you're reading a book, your eyes scan across a page. In the same way, consciousness scans through the multiverse and experiences something we call time as a result, because it experiences an evolution of changes as consciousness is sliding through this great infinite thing. So moment by moment, you manifest, the divine manifests a mortal experience. You manifest a finite thing within an infinite self. There is no boundary around the divine. There is no edge to the divine. There's no limit to the divine. It can be and imagine anything, because there are no things. All things are just ideas, encapsulations of infinity. Subsets of infinity, if you will. So in this multiverse exists literally every possible thing that could ever be from the mortal perspective. Somewhere in the multiverse, there's a version of me with 6 fingers on my right hand. Somewhere in the multiverse, there's a version of me who can barely speak and doesn't have a YouTube channel and blah, blah, blah. There's an infinite number of varieties of me out there. So why do I see this one? Consciousness is focused on this incarnation right now, to the exclusion of all others. One way to think of it is each one of you is actually just a different version of me. That even in this universe, you're kind of a multiversal edition of me, and vice versa. We're all the same me. We're just different iterations of the same me. So what is magic then? Well, if everything has already existed, if everything's already happened, if everything's already the way it is, and you don't change things, consciousness is moving through things. The idea that magic changes stuff is foolish. Again, I return to the Choose Your Own Adventure book model. It's probably the easiest one to digest. Imagine that there exists a book that contains every possible conceivable story ever possibly written or could ever be written. It has them all. And literally every letter of that book is connected to every other letter in the book. You could go and read any other story you want. It's just that some jumps are easier than others. So it's a lot easier for me to read the story of D.H. Thorne sequentially, and at some point he becomes rich, rather than I wake up tomorrow and miraculously I'm a millionaire. Right? So mortal consciousness is limited to just this one timeline of events, this one story in this Choose Your Own Adventure book. But the divine is the book. The divine is consciousness, but consciousness has intentionally made itself ignorant and forgotten. It has literally said, you know what? I know I'm everything, but I'm just going to be this right now. And it follows this timeline, if you will, moment by moment, until something weird happens. What that weird thing is different for everybody. But we've all experienced it. Every single person watching me right now has experienced a synchronistic moment where it seemed like they predicted something weird and it happened. Or they did magic and synchronistically something happened that's different. Or they had a mandala effect experience. They remember something in the past different from everybody else. Everybody listening to me can relate to that. What if I told you that you actually aren't remembering it wrong? What if I told you that was just another reality that you came from? Hard to believe? Understandably so. The whole world would tell you that you're crazy. Doesn't mean you are. So what is magic in this view? You don't change reality, just like you don't change the book that you're reading. You change the story, the sequence of stories that you're reading. You don't change the book. The book is timeless. So think of the Akashic Record. How many of you guys know about the Akashic Record? I have people who will literally come to me and say, you know, magic is real, I can change reality, and the Akashic Record is real, and everything's already written. What I'm trying to point out, and it's lost on a lot of people, is that you don't change reality, you change the timeline that you're witnessing. Magic doesn't change reality. Nothing you do changes reality because you don't actually do anything. If I lift up this remote, I'm not actually lifting up the remote. Consciousness is going to where my hand is here and then here and then here and then here and then here, and it's doing this in such a sequence that it looks like it's moving, and I'm lifting it up and putting it down. But all of those things exist as static moment by moment realities that don't change. Consciousness is sliding through time, not time through consciousness. You guys have to invert your expectations of what you think's going on. So how does this work with magic? What does this have to do? I know I keep like not beating around the bush. It's just really hard to point out. What does this have to do with magic? Magic as a tool, if you will, is a way to transcend this egoic moment of attachment. When you do your rituals, if you're doing them right, you're entering a deep state of transcendental, well, just trance. You're entering a Gnostic state of some sort. To some degree, there is a release of egoistic attachment. If you're not doing that, that's why you're not getting results. Why do you think that it's always the same story? Do your ritual and then forget you did it and don't worry about if it worked. You're supposed to let it all go. You need to hit a state of just boop, just blank out a little bit. Why do you think that is? Because in that moment, you're actually kind of skipping a line in the story. Doing rituals is just one way, and it's not the only way, and it's not the best way. It's different for everybody. Some people, because of their intellectual issues, because they intellectualize stuff so much, magic just don't work. Because for them, it's just a bunch of candles and hooey. It doesn't do anything. But if I tell them that you're sliding between universes and you can do it this way, that might work for them. Some of the most interesting spells I've ever done were literally just me visualizing a future timeline that I want to see, backtracking in my imagination to the present moment again, and seeing what's different from that universe to this one, and making the change that resembles that universe. And in so doing, I'm sort of like a train, like a railroad, splitting the tracks and going off that way instead of the way I was going. So, for example, something stupid. Tomorrow I want to not have to do a truck because there's a truck that's supposed to be there. I don't feel like unloading it. So what am I going to do? Well, I could do a big elaborate ritual, or I can visualize what it'll be like to be driving to work tomorrow and have this moment going, wow, that's really amazing. There's no truck. My spell worked. Okay, I got that moment. I've got this moment. I got it pegged. I got that exact moment. I know it's real. Remember, it's not something after the fact. It's in that moment where the manifestation's happening. I visualize that moment very clearly. Then I walk it back. Okay, so I get up in the morning. All right, I wake up in the morning. Before that, I'm sleeping, and now I'm in the bathroom before bed. I'm here now in the bathroom where I'm thinking of doing this. I'm literally sitting there with my pants down around my goddamn ankles, and I'm planning this spell. All right, what's different? Well, the rag that's currently on the counter, I see it on the floor. So what do? I knock it on the fucking floor, spell done, go to bed, wake up the next morning, there's no truck. This is a true story. This happened to me this week. Now my wife knows why the rag's on the floor, by the way. And in order for that to help, I actually, now Napalm's saying, I don't care if the spell fails, if it works, then it'll be a little bit of help. Exactly. You've got to let go of the it will work or won't work mentality, because that's an attachment. You've got to literally pull your whole ass anchor up, let go, and flow into the timeline you want. If you're still thinking about it, my magic may work or may not, if you're holding on to that, you're actually egoistically attached to your timeline that you're in, because that timeline's saying this may or may not work. If it works, there's no question if it's going to work. There is no attachment to the working or not working. It just happens. Now, somewhere in another alternate timeline, I had to do a truck that morning in the rain. And there's no sweat. There's no worry about it. And if you don't get there, if you don't get the result you wanted, it's not because you did the spell wrong. You literally can't do it wrong. What made it not manifest was because egoistically you're attached to this current paradigm and didn't want to let go of it. For whatever reason. You may say, well, I hate this. I hate this world. I'm not holding on to it. Actually, the more you hate it, the more you actually are attached to it, believe it or not. It's actually kind of counterintuitive. If you're at peace with it, you don't care what happens to it. If you're upset about it, you're attached to it. If you love it, like, I don't want to change it, right? A fear of changing it, that's attachment. So you've got to let go completely. You got to let go of this idea of self, this idea of the universe, this idea of everything being the way it is. You've got to let go of this material world as being the way it is, as literally the way it is. You've got to be able to completely let go of that. You don't need to do big ass rituals for anything. You don't need to do jar spells. You don't need to do candle spells. Those are just options. They are ways to do what I'm describing. Because one could argue that if there is an infinite multiverse full of infinite possibilities, there's a multiverse in which you're doing spells and get what you want, and there's one where you're not. But you don't need to do the spells. You don't need to do the rituals. You don't need to do any of it. You've just got to find a way to connect your current moment with the timeline you want to be in. Now, how the hell does throwing the rag off of the counter cause a manifestation? It doesn't. What's actually happening is, as I'm pushing that rag off the counter, I'm not actually pushing the rag off the counter. Consciousness is traveling to that dimension where the rag falls off the counter, and it goes there, and from there I go off in that direction. But if I'm attached, I could easily just yank right back to the one I'm in. There's nothing stopping me from joinking right back. All it takes is a stray thought. It's a tricky way to do things, admittedly, but I have a lot of success with it. It's actually my favorite technique. It's the best technique I have. When I'm doing rituals that you guys love to watch me do, I'm actually doing that in the ritual. If for those of you who know my rituals, you watch me doing them, they're not ritualized. For those of you who watch me enough, you go, he does it like a little different every time. Of course I do. That's the point. That's the point. I'm following enough of a pattern so I can let go, and then I'm visualizing the future I want to see, and then I look at my ritual space and I go, what's different? Well, I could light this incense over here. I could say this speech over here. I could recite this spiritual poetry over there. I could do this and that. I could feel this. And you don't just do it with the physical shit in your life. You do it with your mental stuff too. You visualize the energy. You talk to the spirits, whatever it is. You do all those things that need to be done to translate your consciousness to the timeline where you get what you want. I'm reading your comments now, guys. So some of this stuff, the difficulty that I'm having here is it's sort of like, I haven't quite reached the point where I can put it into layman's terms, okay, without explaining everything that comes before it. Maybe this makes it like, you know, an advanced topic. I don't think it's that advanced. I think it's actually very basic once you've transcended things. When you've had a transcendent moment, what I'm saying kind of just clicks. It's not hard to grasp, but when you're not there, when you're still intellectualizing everything, what I'm saying is very difficult because you're still living in the world of symbols. You haven't transcended the symbols yet enough. So when I say that you got to move the rag, your brain might be going, well, what does the rag have to do with it? Why would moving the rag change timelines? I don't get it. It's not that... I guess I haven't quite gotten to where I can explain it simply yet with the proper allegories and metaphors. Some of you guys do seem to get it. Some of you guys definitely don't. No offense. Not even the people in the chat. I mean, like where I say it in other places. So when people read what I wrote about this concept yesterday, their mind goes, he's saying his magic doesn't work. I guess he's a fraud and a phony and a LARPer. He's just doing this for... No. You just don't understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the super chat.
Hey, Patchwork! $10! Oh man, you guys are so close to getting me to 100 today. What the hell? The tools like candles, sigils, robes, wands, incense, swords, books, mantras, etc. are all just props used to symbolize our true intent or will or magic, I should say, comes from within. Not wrong. I would say that that's kind of what I'm saying, in the sense that that rag was a prop. Did I need the rag? Technically, no. Why did I use the rag? Because it allows me to rationalize a way for it to work. The moving of the rag allows my conscious mortal self to sit there and go, maybe this is possible. Let's try it. Well, you can do that with all of this. You can do it with rituals. You can do it with the temple space. You can do it with candles and books, like Patchwork's saying. They're symbols. They symbolize your intent and your will, and they remind you of things, and they give you the confidence. They're like Dumbo's feather. How many of you guys have ever watched Dumbo when you were a kid? I can tell you right now that every single prop that you use in magic is basically Dumbo's feather. That's all it is. You don't need them, but it makes it a lot easier to do it with them. They're all Dumbo's feathers. All of this is Dumbo's feather. That's all it is. And at some point, you get to the point where you don't need the feather. But you know what? You still use the feather anyway sometimes because it's fun. There's a joy and a pleasure because it becomes performance art. I'm at the level where I like it as performance art. I don't need to do a ritual. That's not a statement of look how powerful and badass D.H. Thorne is. No, it's the point where I'm trying to say that for me, it's a matter of enjoyment to do the ritual now, not a matter of requirement.
Another one for Patrick.
Patchwork got me to 100. Woo! That's it. I'm closing for the night, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all. All right. Thank you. $100. I can quit tonight. Good night. Are you guys still here? Wait, are you guys still here? The hell? I thought I told you I was leaving. All right, I'm back. I just want to get a drink. I feel like I had like a line of Coke. I haven't done Coke ever. All right, I'm back. Thank you guys. I really appreciate that. It's been a while since we had a good take, and I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. You know what? I can afford to put the lights on now. Holy shit. Patchwork, you just paid my electric bill. Been a while. Let's see. What color should I do? Let's do... You know what? Let's brighten it all the way up. There we go. Yeah, my wife wants me to show you guys the Lich. She loves squishables. It's like her favorite thing. She's got like 1,000 of these fucking things. I'm glad I don't pay for them because I'd be more broke than I already am. But she wanted me to show you guys the Lich. I think it's cute. It's like my favorite one now. Well, one of my favorite ones. We haven't named him yet, though. I wonder what we should call him. Anyway. I think she needs to do... I've been telling my wife that she needs to do a Squishables review channel. I think that would be really awesome if she would just like review Squishables as she buys them and just talk about them and like do cutesy little voices with them. Cause you know, full disclosure, my wife and I like joke around, like we puppet them all over the house. Like, you know, we talk in their voices and everything.
Yeah, the super chat.
Thank you, DK. Says, my plan worked. Congrats. Can you give an example? Thank you. That's true. You're like the barker or whatever. You're like the person in a crowd when you go to a show and they always try to put somebody in the crowd who starts the clap wave going. You're like my clap wave guy. You started off. I appreciate it, DK. Thank you so much, man. A lot of that was from you. A lot of that was from, I'm so terrible with names. God bless it. Azarath. Oh, man. You guys are very generous. Thank you so much. So yes, can you... Damn it, Gar, stop it! For the cute witch. That's in the other... That's behind the curtain over there. Thank you, Gar. My plan worked. Congrats. Can you give an example of rag theory? We're going to call it rag theory in my next book. We're just going to call it rag theory. To get from situation A to situation B in a fake example. Okay, so my advice is to keep it rational. Don't try to do a spell that would make things too surreal and impossible right off the bat. And by the way, hello, Regina. Good to see you as well. Thank you for coming. Don't try to do something too irrational right off the bat. Even if you were practicing magic for a long time and you're used to some irrational stuff, try to keep it rational. Don't try to make the moon fall out of the sky tomorrow. Because no matter how much you've transcended ego, the vast majority of people, myself included, are still really kind of attached to the way things are right now. And to try to do things that are too far out of the realm of possibility just fizzles. It just doesn't do anything. Like 99% of the time. So try to do something very basic. Maybe have someone that calls you like once a week, call you tomorrow. Or it's got to be something reasonable on that level. So let's pretend it's that. So what you want to do, you want to, in whatever way you visualize, I want you to some people aren't very visual. Some people it's all like words in their heads. Whatever your form of visualization is, fast forward yourself in your imagination. Spoiler alert, it's never your imagination, by the way. Consciousness is looking at the future, I promise you. Travel with your imagination to the future and imagine the moment when you realize that person calling you is what you wanted. Try to imagine that moment where the phone rings and the caller ID says it's the person and you go, holy shit, my magic worked. Really get into that, really feel it. I want you, like they say with a lot of these things, really, 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 really feel it. So I want you to feel the feeling of it. I want you to feel the surprise. I want you to see the number. I want you to visualize where you might be when it's happening. Be as specific and perfect as you want. Just remember, you're not expecting that specific thing exactly. You're just trying to really emphasize what it is that you're trying to see. It's like aim small, miss small, right? So aim small, miss small, but accept a boomerang or a hand grenade result. So maybe the call doesn't happen tomorrow. Maybe it happens a day later, but you still get the call, right? Damn it, guys. Now the ball's rolling. Patchwork's super chatting me all over the place. Don't destroy the moon. I like the moon. Well, the good thing is the moon would only be destroyed for me, not for you, because you would still be going off in your timeline with the moon still intact. Get it? There's an infinite number of timelines. One of them, the moon crashed into the Atlantic Ocean and we're all dead right now. So maybe I'll go to that one and you don't go to that timeline because it sucks. Trust me, it sucks. You don't even get like a good, post-apocalypse. You get freaking just dead. That's not fun. All right. So visualize that shit, that phone call perfectly. Get it as vivid as you can. Now start walking your imagination backwards. It's okay if you skip around, just do so with the mental awareness that you're going backwards in time from that moment back to this current moment that you're in right now. When you get back to this current moment where you are right now, spontaneously imagine what that moment looks like and look in your environment and see what's different. This is where it cannot be overthought. You've got to be It's got to be completely spontaneous. Completely spontaneous. It can't be something that you go beforehand, I'm going to visualize the future and know that I got to do this. This has to be spontaneous in the moment when you get to the moment again. You can't pre-plan this. You can't give it forethought. It's literally got to be, oh shit, that's all it is? It's got to surprise you. Whatever it is, it's got to be a surprise, whatever's different. When you realize whatever that thing that's different, then you've got to do it, make it manifest now. So it could be literally anything. It could be as something as irreverent and stupid as fucking farting, to calling your best friend, to like taking this soda bottle and twisting it three quarters of the way around and putting it back down. It could be anything. It could be twisting the ring on your finger. It could be doing a ritual. Maybe you come back to this moment and you see yourself doing a ritual and go, oh shit, I got to do a ritual. Do the ritual. Anything that you imagine in that moment, so long as it's spontaneous, is okay. You'll know if it's the right thing if you're attuned to this magic. Once you practice this a little bit, you'll go, yeah, that's what it had to be that. It had to be. Usually it's something ridiculously simple. In fact, that's why the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once pisses me off so fucking much, because I started doing this like 2 or 3 years ago, and then the movie came out this past year. And I'm like, holy fuck, that's basically my system of magic in a movie. Basically. Yeah, they change it a little bit. It's funny. That's basically my system of magic made into a movie. Watch that movie and you'll be like, oh my God, that is like so different. Napalm Smoothie says, I think that means that no one can really cast a spell on you. Now you're getting it. Someone asked me on my Facebook page, Thorne, does that mean you don't believe you can curse people? I'm not cursing the person. I'm traveling to a dimension in the multiverse in which they are cursed. Totally different thing. Totally different thing. My consciousness is shifting to a reality where they are cursed. That doesn't mean I cursed them. I cursed my vision of them. That's all. Now, Atropa's saying, right, when you plan it doesn't work. That's what I've learned. I believe, that's what I've learned. Believe you already have it. And I will say with a caveat, though, you can plan your rituals, especially when you're beginning. There's nothing wrong with going, I'm going to do a ritual next week on the full moon and blah, 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 blah. Maybe that's the thing you're supposed to change, right? But when you're planning your ritual, there's got to be a spontaneity to the planning. If it's too planned out, if it's too repetitive, I guess, I'm not quite sure what word I'm trying to use here. But if you lack spontaneity when planning your ritual, sometimes you don't even have to do the ritual. Sometimes it's just visualizing the ritual is all you got to do. I'll give you an example. There was some rituals I did in 2020 that I was so emotionally fucked up. In 2021, when I did those rituals, I did the most pathetic performance I've ever done. I mean, I looked like someone had sucked the life out of me. I was basically just depressed trying to do this ritual in the lowest energy I've ever had in like a long ass time. And once again, because of that, yeah, too formulaic is a good way to put it. There's nothing wrong with formula. Just try to be spontaneous with your formulas. That makes no sense, but maybe it does. I did this ritual with a friend. I did my side of it. They did their side of it. And I was so disappointed in my performance of this ritual because it was so stupidly basic. I'm trying to change the world, and you know, I'm trapped in that egoistic mind where that I'm telling you not to do, where you think you're changing the world. That's where I was. And I was just so trapped in it. And sure enough, the thing that I wanted didn't happen the way I wanted it. And Man, that shit hit like a fucking ton of bricks. Ton of bricks. Shit, maybe this ain't real. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I fucked this. All the things that all the noobs think, that I know better, I'm thinking them. I'm just here to tell you, you can be, good at this, right? And still do this. Well, lo and behold, all the things that I was intending for are slowly starting to manifest. 2 years later, only because I stopped clinging to the idea that it would work or that it wouldn't work. So in other words, my interpretation is the divine will was always for me to experience the timeline that we're entering, but I was clinging to the timeline I was in. And the things that I needed to see changed couldn't change the way that I wanted. My ego said, I want this to change this week. Whereas the divine understood that such a jump would be too traumatic for everything in my life. Make it gradual. You start to trust how things manifest when you think of it this way. Because if you're hung up on results, when things don't resolve, you stop sort of recognizing when they do. Like I said, aim small, miss small, but accept horseshoes and hand grenades as a result. I want exactly $100 in my bank account tomorrow. Be very specific. And a week from now, I find a $10 bill on the ground. I mean, is that a roaring success? No. But it's good enough. Never lust for results. Thank you, Patchwork. Yes. Who said that, by the way? There was some magician who said that, wasn't there? Never lust for results. Results are the icing on the cake. Do the ritual for the ritual's sake. And I gotta tell you, there's probably people somewhere in the world that can do all this without any problems. And every single ritual they do works without any possible hiccup or delay. But the irony is those people probably don't do magic very often in the sense that we're talking about. They're probably just so integrated with their divine self that they look at the world and go, it's going to be this way, and it is. It's going to be that way, and it is. Their magic is a prediction because they know they're the divine. And by definition, anything the divine predicts is a promise that it will be. And part of my practice is to get and stay in that mind state. When I'm in a ritual, I'm sort of, if I'm doing it right, I'm in that mind state. It's more of a prediction than it is like a cause. Yeah, thank you guys. I had a feeling that was Crowley. It sounded like Crowley. So one of my goals through my practices, which I have been lazy about, admittedly, the last several months, but one of the goals of my practices is to transcend that egoic state of I'm going to cause this and relax. Yeah, DK, EA is basically, EA is talking about like catharsis, right? Which is a very good way to achieve that lack of lust. Absolutely. No question. It's a very, very good technique. So, when people read what I wrote yesterday and they get butthurt over it, none of my followers and fans got butthurt, by the way. I want to make sure that, I had to make a post yesterday because people were getting, not argumentative, but I was getting the impression that some people might think that I'm getting bothered by this. And I will admit to a certain degree of frustration because it's frustrating to try to explain it. Not really frustrated like I'm annoyed that people don't get it necessarily, but it's frustrating to try, right? But then when I saw outside of my friendship circle on Facebook, there were people who were just like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, blah, 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 blah. He's obviously never practiced magic if he thinks this. And it's just like, I want to say that like I'd be offended, but I find it more informative and helpful to me than anything, because number one, that reveals to me where their head's at, like what they think is going on. And number two, it means I didn't communicate it right. So I've got to work on the communication. So I guess my next ritual, my next rag on the floor ritual is going to be to try to get the communication up and try to be able to communicate it better. I find it kind of ironic because one person criticizing me was quoting Crowley. And it's like, I have a feeling if Crowley and I were sitting in the same room, he'd be patting me on the back. He'd be saying, thank you. That's what I was trying to say. They just didn't have any knowledge of the multiverse back then. Crowley was all about will. Okay? And at least from my readings of Crowley, which is not extensive, admittedly. So if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. But in my opinion, what I've read of Crowley, he's all about will. Well, what is will? That's another conversation we should have another time, probably, because it's another long conversation. But will is the Tao. In the shortest way of putting it, the Tao is the will. The will is the Tao, and the Tao is the will. You understand the Tao, you understand the will. Will is not about choice. There is no such thing as free will, because the will can never be contained or entrapped in the first place. If there is nothing opposing the will, then there cannot be free will, because it's always free. The point is moot, right? There is only the will. There is only the Tao. And the will does as the will does. And it is inevitable that the will does what the will does. You can't make your will do something. That would be the will willing itself to will itself to do. It's like plugging an extension cord into itself. That's what it's like when you try to will yourself to do something. That's silly. It's always your will, even the parts you don't like. Even the ego parts, even the parts where ego is having a desirous moment, that's still the will. The will is desiring to manifest egoic desire. That's all. So how do you change that? Well, you can't force it. You just have to go with your will. Your will has to change. And until your will changes, it's going to be that way. How do you change the will? You don't, because will is free. Will has no constraints. It has no requirements. There's no desires. There's no reason to the will. The will does, the Tao does as the Tao does. The will does as the will does. To have your will truly liberated requires that the will wills itself to be free. It's like a huge catch-22, a big double-edged sword. That's what makes it so difficult. Because a lot of people approach magic like, I'm going to program my will. I'm going to force this to happen. I'm going to program my subconscious. Well, that's absurd, because that's already your will and subconscious doing that. Where did you think the idea came from? It was always your idea, your will. Your idea follows the will, not the other way around. Your ideas don't make the will do anything. You can't idea yourself into a different will, because that's always the will. Your ideas follow the will. They're an echo of will. They're a commentary on will. This is why meditation, transcendental meditation, if there is one skill, one magical technique, skill, etc., that you really have to master, more important than any other, that is entering transcendental states. I don't care which system or style you study, you must master. That's not to say you can't do magic without it. I'm saying if you want to do this with all seriousness, if you want this to be if you want to be, I'm a magician, I'm a this, you must master some form of transcendental meditation. You must master some form of being able to enter a Gnostic state, Samadhi, Zen, whatever your language is for it, you have to be able to enter that state. If you cannot enter that state, you can still do all this stuff, but once you can enter that state, this stuff becomes, it takes on a whole new dimension, because the will is laid bare. When there is no egoic ideation going on, when you are fully present in the moment, transcended completely all of this material bullshit, consciousness and the will are both laid bare. And from there on, it all just kind of falls into place. The hard part will be trying to describe it. Napalm Smoothie says, my will says that I must go and write in my journal. Yes, indeed. Go write in your journal. Journaling is also important. You can actually use that in this, rag on the floor method. Journaling could be your rag on the floor. The thing is, you can't plan it ahead of time. But I would recommend, I don't do it as much as I should. I've done it a lot in the past. I do recommend that you journal everything you're doing. Just keep a little system of notation and say, did this ritual or spell or a rag on the floor for this result. And then the reason you do that is because, as we keep saying now, never lust for the result. So don't worry about if it comes true. Instead, a few months from now, just thumb through your journal and put a check mark next to what worked. That's all. Because your practices should be reinforcing your ability to predict the outcomes. That's all. So I am going to probably end this in a minute. Yes, art. And Gar is a great artist, by the way. If you guys don't know, Gar does a lot of cool artwork. He posts them a lot in my Facebook group. But check out Gar on Facebook for sure. Or, I don't know, Gar, does your YouTube do anything? I never clicked on your YouTube. I agree, though. Art and expression are... Look, let's be honest. All magical ritual as we understand it is part of theater. Once upon a time, everything that we do as ritual was once part of theater, because theater originated in the temples. It was originally based on mythology and temple work and stuff like that. Damn it. I'm going to turn off super chats in a minute. Thanks, guys. You've talked about this state before. Do you remember your first time entering the state? What exercise helped you get there? My very first... So, we do this all the time. Most of you guys enter these states and don't even know it. So instead of thinking like, what was the first time, make it more like, what's the first time I realized it? The first time I realized any of these kinds of states, the very simplest version where I silenced my anxious-filled thinking was when I was about 13 years old reading a book that described how to... So right now, everybody in the chat, how many of you guys can just stop thinking at all? How many of you guys can just exist without thought? Not without mind. You can't make your mind go away. How many of you guys can turn thoughts off so you're not thinking? You're just existing. And I was reading this book that said, like, you can do that. I'm like, you can? You mean you can be here without, like, a constant stream of chatter in your head or pictures going on? You can do that? What is that like? What happens when you do that? Doesn't that mean you go away? Where do you go when you do that? It was like a mind-blowing concept. What happens when you stop thinking? Don't you like stop existing? Isn't thinking your existence? Isn't that what you are, as thoughts and all? So, all of these wrong ideas, right? I challenged them because I ended up doing what the book said. And the book said, concentrate on something like a letter or a word or a number and really, really focus on it. So I think what they said was like, picture a number 2 or something and draw the number 2 on an imaginary blackboard in front of you and just keep drawing the number 2. Draw it and erase it. Draw it and erase it. Draw it and erase it. Now remove the blackboard, but keep drawing it in empty space. 2, 2 and erase. 2 and erase. 2 and erase. And say it to yourself. Really just get into this repetitive 2 thing. Then after a little while, stop doing it. Just cold turkey that shit. Stop drawing it, stop thinking it, stop saying it. For a brief moment, you will exist without any thoughts. And your first thought's probably going to be, holy shit, I'm not thinking. It's probably going to take like half a second and you're going to start thinking again. Once you've found that moment of no thought, you can make that moment bigger and bigger and longer until eventually you can hold that forever. Not forever maybe, but for a long ass time, we'll say.
Gar answered me and said no.
He doesn't have it. Okay. Well, check out Gar on Facebook. Gar, if you can, post in my personal Facebook group.
He said walking spirals and Facebook.
Okay, yeah, check him out on Facebook for sure. He's a cool guy. When you enter that emptiness state, you are right there. That's like the rest is kind of inevitable if you practice that. If you practice that emptiness often enough, you will eventually, because you're already existing in a kind of egoless state when you do that. It's only a matter of time and practice before that becomes a full transcendental state. When you go all in and you realize that all of these experiences that you consider mortal reality are kinds of thoughts in their own, when you realize a memory is just a special kind of thought, or when you realize that the taste of black raspberry soda is just a special kind of thought, when you realize that, now what? Now what? Can you transcend those? Yes, you can. Takes a little bit more work though, but you can do it. You can use a sensory deprivation tank. You can sit and meditate. What do you think a Buddhist monk is doing when they're sitting there with their knees folded under them, going completely numb, I might add, for hours at a time, humming? They are literally doing a sensory deprivation tank of sorts, that's not so sensory deprivation-y. It's you're sitting in this posture that leads to physiological numbness, disassociation, and all of those things, so that you exist in a space where there's no thought, no bodily experience. All of that goes away. You are a great field of nothing with consciousness. You're reduced down to just consciousness. What do you think the word transcendental means? You're transcending this mortal experience and returning to just pure consciousness. When you exist in pure consciousness, that's actually the state of the divine. After a little while of doing this, it clicks and you go, this is divinity. This is what divinity is. It is pure blissful consciousness in a state of oblivion. That oblivion is not empty. It's just everything all at once to such a point, it's numbness. It's like hearing every sound that there is till you go deaf. It's not that there's nothing there, it's that everything is there. When you realize what you're doing, you're not actually turning off thoughts, you're zooming out away from them. They're still there. It's just now all of them are coming so much that there's nothing there. Some people, when they do meditation, they get racing thoughts first. Some people, when they do meditation, they stop focusing on one thing and they get it all at the same time. And it's like this big roar, and then there's silence that follows it. Everybody's a little different in how they do it. Me, I pull back and it's like I'm in deep space or something. But it's not darkness, it's just it's no thingness. I really, why am I yelling at you? Because I like to yell. What's up, Justin? I know, you know what it is? I actually really enjoyed when I did the thing at Iron Garden, because I had the microphone right here. So I just talked. And I think, like, when this microphone is over here, I'm afraid you guys can't hear me. So I probably do yell more than I need to. I probably could just talk, right? Can you guys hear me when I'm just, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But no, so doing this stuff gets you into this transcendental state. And from there, realization follows. And that realization is life-altering and becomes a practice. Everything changes when you realize this. I mean, so Dean says, quiet your thoughts. That is a common way it's said, but I don't think that's actually accurate. I think it's, you need to, like, stop focusing on them. You know, you don't think your thoughts, you find them. Like I said earlier, you find your thoughts. You acknowledge your thoughts. You become aware of your thoughts. You focus on your thoughts. There's tension around those thoughts. If you release that tension and let them go, they eventually fade. DK says, you sound pretty much the same volume whether you talk or yell. But if you don't yell and do your ranty voice, I don't think I could handle that. Yeah, I mean, here, let me do this. It's probably going to make all kinds of noise. Forgive me. See, what I really should do is I should really just hold a, do a video like this. This way you can actually hear my actual speaking voice. Like, this is how I actually am. When it's over there, I freak the fuck out and I fucking talk too loud. So this is what I actually sound like. When I post the video of me at the Iron Garden, this is actually what it's like. But I do have to be careful because when I do this, my wife might appear from around the curtain and attack me with her vagina. I'm not kidding. This is actually how it goes. So she's probably going to start laughing in about 3 seconds when the timing catches up. But yeah, so this is probably what I should do. I should probably have that here. Do I sound different, guys? Like, be honest. What's that, honey?
That way it was a little muffled.
What, when I was holding it up, it was muffled?
Just a little bit.
Maybe I wasn't, like, in the zone.
Like a little too close.
Oh, a little too close. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. I need Fleshy to come back. Everybody pay for Fleshy for another plane ticket so we can get him over here. And I want him to, like, just engineer my sound. Just engineer my sound so it's perfect. And that way I can talk calmly into the microphone. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know. Okay. So, DK's right. Okay, thank you, DK. So you're saying, don't hold it here. Try holding it over here. But see, that's the thing. Like, psychologically, I'm like, oh, that's too far away. And I want to yell at it now because it's too far away. Like, isn't that weird? Like, this is totally, like, I gotta train myself so that I can just talk like this, like blah 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 blah. I don't know if that's picking me up. Well, let me look at the levels. Because what I used to do is yeah, it's picking me up pretty good. What I used to do is I used to have the microphone on a boom, and I used to keep it. Well, I think I kept it a little closer, but I used to feel like I could talk into it that way, or I'd wear a lapel mic. I really got to practice just talking, because I do prefer. Maybe I would talk longer if I didn't yell. Maybe if I wasn't yelling, I could actually go like 4 or 5 hours again. Maybe, I don't know. So, what do you guys like better? Do you like it better when I put it over there and I yell at it? Oh, DN says he can't really hear me. I don't know, guys. It don't matter. It don't matter. I think it's fine the way it was. That guy, I bet you that guy, who was it, Justin? What was his name? Bet you that guy Justin's like doing a victory lap. I got him to talk different. I made Thorne do something. I had one person like get like that. They're like, "Oh, I made your nose bleed." Like, no, you didn't, dude. I get nosebleeds like every day. I could do ASMR of my books. Yeah, I could. Yeah, I could. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate the generosity tonight. That video of the Iron Garden thing, I will try to put out. I don't know what day. Like I said, I'm gonna probably re-edit it one more time and try to cut out anybody that might not want to be in it accidentally, because I have no way of contacting them. So it might be like really weird and zoomed in. I apologize for that. It may also not be that exciting because it was kind of like a Q&A too. It was kind of like what I do here, but I was like addressing the audience and their questions and stuff. So I'll try to release that within the next couple days. Yeah. You know, I got to admit a certain amount of burnout doing social media. I really have to, even though I do it a lot. DN says, I like it close. The words get lost in the static. I think they mean they do like it close, but it tends to be staticky. I think that's what you're saying. DK asks, wait, what exercises helped you? No big details explaining them. Just name of techniques and references if you remember where you got them. I don't. I do various... It's actually easier for me if I just tell you what I do rather than like tell you what they call them. You know, some of them I invented for myself. I got to be honest with you. But one of the simplest ones is just, you know, you can use the Om mantra and just sit comfortably and do Om as best you can. Make sure you leave space between each recitation and focus on that silence between each recitation. You know, that's one of the easiest ones. It's basically no different than the one I described before, where you just say 2, 2, 2. Oh, Napalm. Well, thank you for coming. I'm sorry it's hard to leave a stream, but it'll be up later. I'm probably going to be ending in 10 minutes. I kind of have a feeling I kind of want to cut it short tonight. You know, again, full disclosure, I went off my keto diet for a whole week, and my brain is all fried. Like, it's really weird. Like, if you know the keto diet, you know that it actually sharpens your brain. And when you go back to carbs, your brain just gets, like, stupid again. So, like, my brain's fine. Like, I think, like, thoughtlessly, I reason just fine. My language is like in the shitter again. So DK says, go play video games with your wife, and thank you for everything. You're welcome, guys. No, thank you for real. Like, you guys were very generous tonight, and I really appreciate that. And you know, it's really awesome, and I'm gonna use that money for something fun, and you guys really make my night. It's been a little while since we had a really productive night, like super chat wise. And that means a lot to me that you guys did that. So thank you so much. Ask your friend if you can share the... Oh, the keto diet I do is just... I look up what's keto and I do that. Like, I keep my carbs down to, like... Technically, you can do, like, 20 carbs a day. But I do, like, 5 or 10. And, like, grams. And everything else is mostly fat. And, just avoid all cheating, and I just stick to it as hard as I can for months on end. And yeah, it's supposed to be like somewhere, it's supposed to be around 85% fat is what it's supposed to be. Like 5% carbs, and the rest is protein. It's like 75, 85%. It's all a little different. So, but yeah, so for those again who maybe missed it before, October 29th, my wife and I are going to intend to be at the club again in Newark, we hope. 95% chance, 90% chance we're doing it. You know, we're probably not going to spend the night this time. We're probably just going to drive out there, spend a couple hours, and then drive home. So, you know, yeah, I think it'll still be fun. It'll still be fun. So, all right, guys, I think that's going to be it for me tonight. I'm kind of feeling like brain dead. So I really appreciate all you guys coming. I appreciate all those super chats. If you guys are interested in my work, you can check out the links in the description of this video if you're new here. If you're not new here, I thank you for not being new here. Some of you guys I've seen for like, what, 4 years now, it looks like? Like, some of you guys I recognize going way back. And I appreciate all you guys so much. So, thank you, and until next time, mind the shadows.